Hello, everyone, and welcome to this consciousness ascending experience. We're extremely excited you're here for today's intuitive conversation. If this is your first time with us and you find value, be sure to like and subscribe. You're most welcome and appreciated. If you're inspired to new understanding, please comment. This further solidifies the new insights inside of you and serves as inspiration to the growth and expansion of others. Lastly, be sure to check the description for free content, the ability to connect with us more closely, and to connect with our special guest. Today, we have the privilege to create with Dr. Terry Meekins. Terry served 20 years in the United States Navy and is a retired combat veteran. Currently, he is the senior pastor at Cornerstone Faith Church in Moreno Valley, California, and is the author of the book titled Divine Wisdom: Understanding Your Awakening to your spiritual ascension, that's available on Amazon. Terry, it's exciting for you to be here, man.
I am excited to have you on. It is such a pleasure. Like I told you before, I've been a fan for a year since I saw you on the Alex Ferrari. I think it was
Yeah,
the podcast,
yeah, next level soul.
Next Level Soul, and you just resonated with my spirit. And I was like, oh man, this he's in my arena right there. So I was
Yeah,
like, and what was crazy about it is before you emailed me the invite, which I am so appreciative, I was thinking, man, I would really love to connect with you and really talk to you and really just, and that was kind of like a informal prayer, if you will.
yeah,
And 2 days after I had that, and it was like really, really strong. Everything comes to me in really threes. So on the
uh-huh.
third one, you popped up and I went, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome because, I've got a short list of people that I was going to contact to try to start this thing, this intuitive conversations, and a couple of people. I've got a few people that channel that reached out to me and had sessions with me,
Hmm.
and so I had them on there and a couple of other people. But to start outside of my first one, you were the biggest. It was like send him, touch base with him, touch base with him, and I already knew what you were going to say, right? So it was like
Right.
do that. And so it's interesting how you're telling me that you're giving me this information and how this happens a lot.
Right.
We don't, nobody has the conversation and says, "Hey, did you just think about me? I just thought about you." And then you called, or a couple of days later, we saw each other in store. Nobody has those conversations, but that type of thing happens all the
Oh,
time,
yep. Yep.
right? It happens all the time. What do you think about that?
I believe everything is divine timing, divine planning to help us along our spiritual path in the direction we agreed to go on prior to coming into this incarnation.
Yeah,
And I believe the more that, for me particularly, that I tap into that divine wisdom and that consciousness, the more I see the evidence. Because, as you say, you can't make it up. It's kind of like when people think, and I teach this in the church, that hey, have you ever had that thought of thinking in someone and all of a sudden they popped up and you haven't seen them in months or years, and all of a sudden you guys come together and all of a sudden it is the perfect conversation. It is like everything was just as it was before when you all had the first meeting compared to
yep,
where it is now.
yep,
And we don't talk about it enough. And for me being a pastor, those type of deja vus are not taught or preached from the pulpit, and a lot of it is pushed by the wayside. And nothing against religion, but it pushes it aside where it's almost taboo to talk about it, even though it exists and it happens to every single person.
yeah,
We
yeah,
don't express it from the pulpit to the congregation of deja vus and divine interactions. When we
yeah,
have that thought, even though we might touch a base it here and there in some scriptures or some spiritual teaching, but it's never to the accuracy of, hey, you know what? It is amazing how the universe, creator, whatever you want to call it, brought us together at this particular time, at this particular moment for a particular reason. And I'm
yeah,
also a believer that it is also designed to teach and learn both parties at the same time. We're always teachers and students. So when interactions happen, I go, okay, what is it I'm supposed to learn in this moment? And
Yeah.
that's kind of been my shift when I have those. Okay, what am I supposed to learn in this moment? Because I learned that nothing happens by coincidence, and there are definitely no accidents.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one, and that's something that we say collaborative components.
Okay.
Collaborative components always coming together with perfect timing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the energies first. Something
Right.
about the vibration, something about the energy, because with people, with experiences, because like you said, perfect timing. You cannot 2 minutes earlier, 2 minutes later, it wouldn't have happened.
It
Whether
would.
it's something that you think was awesome or something that you think was terrible. Two
Right.
minutes earlier or 2 minutes later, I mean, that
Yeah.
small of a fraction of amount of time, it would never have happened. You wouldn't have saw that person
Right.
walking through the parking lot. You wouldn't
Right.
have been standing beside them at the store.
Exactly.
Right? So how
Exactly.
how do you account for that? you
And
know?
and really, I search for those type of answers on, okay, why? Why did this happen? And again, it goes for me. I just keep it really simple. It's for me to learn something
Yep.
always. And I get a great example was many years ago when I started Cornerstone Faith Church. We were actually doing the traditional religious things, and we actually had the church in our home. And my associate minister, Adam, we were having some type of conflict.
Yeah.
And long story short, he went his way, I went my way. And I just kind of went into the, you know what? I learned a great lesson from that. He was a bit of a narcissist, but I had to learn, you know what? I was also a narcissist, not that I want to admit it and about a year and a half later, after I really just kind of went through, you know what? Okay, I'm glad that happened. I forgive him. I love him. No ill will. I happened to
Mm-hmm.
see him on his birthday
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
at the restaurant, and I didn't recognize him. And he came up and he gave me the biggest bear hug, and man, I love you. And I'm going, who are you? At first, I was like, who are you? Then it clicked. Oh my gosh, it's him. And I went,
Yeah.
wow, what a magnificent thing, because there was no animosity, there was no hate, there was no
Yeah.
ill will, there was none of that. What had happened in the past, it was like we almost shifted into different dimensions where we were in terms of the
Yeah.
journey that we were going. And it was kind of a coming together meeting of, it's okay, everything's okay, you're at peace now, you don't have to hold on to that type of energy.
Yeah.
And everybody at my table that was pastors was like, oh man, and his whole family was there. I had baptized his family, I had married all his family, I had buried all of them, so I was very close to him. And when
Yeah.
that incident happened, I just kind of gradually, gracefully, kind of weaned my way away from it, to
Yeah.
kind of give myself some growth to learn. Because when
Yeah.
those things happen, it jars you, and it kind of sets you back on why. And I stopped asking, okay, why not? If
Yeah.
I'm going to practice this, why would I not go ahead and uproot all those feelings that I probably had suppressed or thought about or whatever that needed to be healed?
Yeah.
That's what for me, that's what I learned out of that meeting. And I was just looking at him in awe, and he even looked different, spoke
Yeah.
different, talked different.
Yeah. You
So for
know,
me, it was that healing.
yeah. You know, one of the things I hear in that I told myself I have to really focus on me,
Hmm.
because I realize in doing that, that's the only way that I can help other people is if
Right.
I have done it. You
Yep.
have to do that.
Yep.
And people's, we have been conditioned to shy away from painful things.
Right.
We've been
Right.
conditioned to move away from our traumas and all of those things that all of us have experienced at one point, some type of trauma as a child and all those things. And we, you know, even at our age, we're still trying to move away from those things. But I've learned that the pains and the traumas and all of those things, there's huge understandings in those happenings, in those experiences.
Yep.
And to the same degree that you feel that pain even now of what happened as a child, there's huge power for you to the same degree on the other side of that in
Yep.
the understanding.
Yes.
Have you experienced that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Recently, we just bought a an RV and a moped, and
Mhm.
in California, I didn't know that if you got a moped that went a certain amount of hours, you got to get a driver's license. So now I'm stuck with this moped that now I need a driver's license for,
Uh-huh.
and they either want you to go take the test or take a motorcycle test. Well, I
Oh,
really
wow.
didn't realize that as a child, I saw my older cousin mangle his leg up in his dirt bike,
Yeah.
and I had this subconscious fear of that happening to me. So when I saw that and saw him go through the broken leg and them putting the cast on it and him taking clotheslines and trying to scratch the itch and just going through all that,
Yeah.
it really triggered me. And honestly, I didn't know how bad it triggered me. So I just went, you know what? I'll never buy a motorcycle. Problem solved. And I
Yeah.
shoved that memory aside, that trauma that really, and the thing is, here's the thing, it wasn't even my trauma.
Yes.
It was the appearance that I saw that traumatized me, kind of like if you see something that triggers you.
Hmm.
And then when I got this moped, had to learn that I had to do this, and I went to a motorcycle course, man, so many emotions came up that I had to deal with that I failed that thing twice and went,
Yeah.
okay, there's a reason why this is happening for me to learn to heal from that, you know, that trauma. And my guide, my Holy Spirit went, the teacher's telling you you're doing okay. And I rejected it. You're
Yeah.
doing fine. You didn't crash into anyone. You didn't break our equipment. You didn't hurt anybody else. They're telling me all the affirmative things of what I'm doing right, but because I would go back to that childhood memory of, man, I see him do that wheelie and he just crashed out and
Yeah.
seen the mango leg. And I think that memory just really stuck to the point where the second time around, it was a little bit better. And then the third time, I was like, okay, I got to get past this because that was his journey. It wasn't mine. So why am I
Yeah.
taking on that idea that it could happen to me when nothing's ever happened to me?
Yeah.
Same thing when I was a child. My uncle, I was afraid of heights because my uncle was 6'4" and I'm knee high to a duck, and he would pick me up, throw me up as high as he could.
Yeah.
And you know that rush of feeling where your
Yep.
stomach goes up to your throat?
Yep.
And when
Yep.
you're a little kid, you don't realize it. And he would catch me, bring me between the legs, and back up again. He'd do this a couple of times. When I joined the Navy and started getting into the military aspect of it, I didn't realize how afraid of heights I was until my guides took me back to that memory. And then they had to go, okay, let's walk you through it. Why did he do it? Was it malicious? And I went, no. Was he happy to see you? Yeah. Did he treat you with uttermost love and kindness and give you all the treats and play all? And I went, yeah, this is why he did it. He had no harm. And then they asked me the important, did he ever drop you? And the answer was, well, no, he never dropped me. I just didn't like the feeling. Okay, so you didn't like the feeling, but he never dropped you. So why are you holding on to that fear? And then once I really thought about it and really let that really sink in as a belief that, yeah, he was doing it because he loved me and not because, you know, it was something malicious or scary or whatever. Man, I could climb up the top of the mast on the ships. I could climb up top buildings, and
Yeah.
you know, it was really good healing. But all of it happened as I got older and started on this journey of awakening. And it
Hmm.
was kind of like everything that was prior to my adulthood was surfacing for me to heal. So I took it as a healing moment for me to learn to deal with those that I could help other people address their fears and their issues in the same manner.
How important is it for people to understand their condition?
Say again?
How important is it for people to understand that they are conditioned and
Very.
that they have these ideas inside of them that, whether they realize it or not, often are steering them away from what
Mhm.
they believe they want versus toward it?
Correct. It is very important. And like you said earlier, many times we push those things away because we don't want to deal with the hurt. We don't want to deal with the pain. We don't want to deal with the suffering aspect. We just don't want to deal with it. So we'll kind of lock it in a closet
Yeah.
and forget about it. And then life continues to go on and we think, oh, we're okay, until that skeleton or that issue pops up later on, and then we don't know how to deal with it.
Hmm.
And I think that's the biggest part, where people don't know how to deal with it and don't know how to address it and don't know how to get past it, not realizing this is here to set you on your original path that you were designed for, to expose all your gifts. And a lot of gifts are not being used because of what I and many others have put aside and locked away and not addressed. And then the other thing is, when it's addressed, sometimes people get very offensive or they'll shut down. Rarely is it open where they want to go down the rabbit hole and explore why this is important, that I need to address this issue.
Hmm.
Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that we say is that there's a you
Mm-hmm.
beyond all of the conditioning,
Yep.
beyond the programming, beyond the trauma, and you have no idea. I've
Yep.
had, I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna put it this way. I've had the carrot dangled in front of me twice of what that feels like.
Mm.
One time I was laying in the bed in meditation. I was doing a meditation that I had learned where I was like, I don't know if I learned it or if it was given to me, but I was walking down steps, and that kind of was the symbolizing going deeper, right? But I
Okay.
was going down the steps, and I had been doing this for a while, and all of a sudden it felt like everything just lifted off of me like a mist. If
Mm.
you can imagine a mist
Mm-hmm.
going up,
Yep.
everything just misted off of me,
Mm.
and the feeling that I felt scared me. And then I was out of it. Just like that, I was like,
I'm not dealing with this.
yeah, yeah, it scared me. And then the second time, we had a table. I used to get a table and put blankets and stuff on it to give my wife a massage. And I was allowing myself to be guided to where to go, like on her
Mm-hmm.
legs and her arms to give her a massage. And it happened again. This time I was standing up,
Mm-hmm.
giving the massage because she's on the table. And it happened again, and everything whisked off of me, and it lingered for about 20 minutes.
Wow.
And it's hard to describe the feeling,
Mm-hmm.
but what I know I can describe is what wasn't there.
Right.
The
Right.
fear wasn't there. The excessive care and concern for others' opinions and all of those things, there's no weight. The weight that we
Right.
often feel on our shoulders and all of the stuff, all of
Right.
the shoulds and the musts and all the things
Mm-hmm.
that we think we're supposed to be and do as a dad or a parent or in our job, none of that stuff was there. It was like I could take a deep breath,
Mm-hmm.
and it also felt powerful. Like I could call anybody if I need to make a sale. I could call anybody. I could have
Mm-hmm.
called. I ain't gonna say it, but I could have called anybody
Right.
because I've done a lot of worked in a lot of sales positions, especially after college, and I know what that felt like, not knowing what was happening, but not being able to make the calls with that fear of rejection and
Mm-hmm.
trying to make sure I was prepared and end up
Mm-hmm.
never making the call for going in my mind so much. But none of that was there.
Right.
And so that happened those two times. It's like that's what we're really looking as human beings. But it doesn't just go away. Now, from my readings, though, I feel like, okay, well, it looks like for some people it has just gone away. But for me, it's a process. You have
Yes.
to keep unraveling the
Yep.
ideas. You have to get the tools
Mm-hmm.
and unravel those ideas and keep working at it. But every little bit that you chip away, a little more light comes through
Right.
to discover the truth of you. And it's about knowing who that is now.
Yes.
Not, oh, okay, this is who I am after you leave your body. No, What if you can know who you are now while you're
Yep.
living your life?
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting you say that because what you're describing is what I also go through. It's a process, and it's like peeling layers
Yep.
off of an onion
Hmm.
to finally get to it. And I recently, just matter of fact, yesterday, I kept getting this word authenticity, authenticity, and it just kept ringing authenticity. And for me, it's bringing me back to my authentic self, who I am. And like you said, we don't have to transition into the afterlife to find out, oh, that's who I was. We can find out who we really are right now. And I think that's really because I've set my mind on to discovering who I am as Source created me to be for a long time. I think all those layers had to be peeled away and addressed
Hmm.
to get to the authentic me of who I am. This is me. This is who I am. This is what it's about. This is my truth. And
Hmm.
everybody's opinion, you know, will not, or I should say, shouldn't at this level topple me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when you get that empowerment, man, you can move mountains, you can move obstacles,
Hmm.
you can actually move the self. Because we're
Yeah.
the biggest mountain.
Yeah.
Like you say, I was in sales for the Navy. I was a Navy recruiter for, matter of fact, that was my last assignment. And it was the trying to make that sale. And you being a salesman, it's either easy or it's hard depending on who you're dealing with and the product
Yeah.
you're selling. Well, for
Yeah.
me, I was selling an intangible product. You can't touch the Navy. You can't touch, you can't touch those things. You have to see the uniform. You have to hear the words and the authenticity of what I'm saying about to recruit you into it. And then there was days where I would shut down and go, oh my gosh, if I make this phone call, I'm gonna get hung up on. How many more times I got to get hung up on? How many more times do I got to get cursed out? How many more times I got to get the look? And after a
Yeah.
while, you just kind of go, you know what? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Each no was a blessing for me because I was able to handle rejection. And a lot of
Yeah.
people don't know how to they don't feel empowered behind the rejection. I embraced it. Oh, come on, bring it on. Tell me no, because it helped me heal more and more and more and more to get out of that state. So, like when you were talking about that weight being lifted and just being able to breathe, every time I go through that process of peeling the layers back, I'm able to breathe a little bit more and a little bit easier and think a little bit clearer and be more decisive. And my word is deliberate creator in that moment now. So, as a deliberate creator in that moment, once I've got through that process, now the process for me is not ending, but it's also going to the next level of the process.
Hmm.
And our process is never ending because we're eternal spirit. So it's ongoing and ongoing and ongoing.
Yeah.
It's up to me to say, okay, how fast do I want this to go or how slow do I want it to go? And and I think the important thing is, where am I at in my now? Where am I now? What am I in my now? Because oftentimes we'll get too far in the future or stuck in the past and not deal with the now. I got to address this right now. And everything that's happening around me is happening to me now for me to heal from that and grow from that and be empowered from that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes sense. How you said authenticity, and so many people think they're being authentic, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're really being their mama or their daddy, or
Mm-hmm. Yep.
or what they think or what they have seen on TV as who they should be in
Yep.
the many different situations of life. What have you discovered about yourself now versus before, and in the becoming of being more and more authentic? What does that really look like for the individual, and the feeling as you know and you can see, or can you see in yourself that you're becoming more authentic
Yes.
over maybe who you used to be?
Correct. Well, like you say, we were told who we were. We were told what to believe, depending on what culture you grew up in. You were told how to behave. You were told to do these things, and then you kind of added on to that on your own. And many times people aren't authentic because they're trying to be like mama, which is nothing wrong. They're trying to be like daddy. They're trying to be like grandma. They're trying to be like their best friend. They're trying to be like the movie star, or, somebody who's a
Hmm.
great. There's nothing wrong, but then it's only so long that you can pretend to try to be like them before you start discovering your own self.
Hmm.
Because I've learned some of the things that my parents like to do, I don't like doing.
Hmm.
Some of the music they listen to, I don't like to listen to.
Hmm.
So I had to go, okay, what does Terry like to do? And I began that process of, okay, I know what they like to do. I know what makes them happy, but what makes me happy? What makes me genuinely happy? And then when I started to begin to be genuinely happy, those that I was mimicking or emulating, all of a sudden had a problem with it. Why you believe in this way? Why do you believe that way? In other words, for me,
Yeah.
my parents being very religious, and I won't name the religion, but when we grew up in that particular religion, I had decided when we started Cornerstone, I'm going to lead that. And
Hmm.
the people around me had a huge problem with that, because how dare you change your mind and go do what you want to do to make you happy?
Hmm.
And I had to be authentic to myself. So even when I left religion, not that I left religion, but when I became more spiritual in my understanding from the
Yes.
background I came from, it was I was trying to still emulate the religion
Yes.
after I left that particular denomination. I still found myself, and the Holy Spirit says, this is not making you happy. Why are you doing it? You're going through the motions based on habit. And I think a lot of it also, of what you were saying, is when we are not authentic, we become habitual to other people's habits.
Mm.
And I was a habitual creature of other people's habits and not my own habits.
Yeah.
And once I started becoming more authentic, those religious beliefs that I didn't really believe in, or didn't, well, let me say this, that didn't no longer serve me at that moment, I began to shift away from. And when I begin to shift away from it, I start becoming more joyful and more happy and more at bliss and more, my biggest thing, more at peace with self. To me,
Hmm.
authenticity is being 100% true to self and being at peace with self, to the point
Hmm.
where I start saying, you know what? Do I want to be right, or do I want to be at peace? And I would always go, I'd rather be at peace, because I don't have
Yes.
to be right all the time. And sometimes I'm not right all the time, and that's okay. But where is
Yes.
my peace? So once I started finding my peace in this now, right now, that's when authenticity started coming into play. Where am I at peace, or do I want to be right? Because I can give a message, and I would always try to push that message, kind of like the typical pastor. And
Hmm.
everybody didn't want to receive that.
Hmm.
And I had to say, you know what? You're just a messenger. Give the message, shut up, move on, and go about your life. It is not your job to help them figure it out, unless they come and ask and you add to it. But at the end of the day, it's their journey. So I had to be authentic with myself and say, you know what? If I give it to you, that's fine. If you accept it, fine. If you don't, I'm perfectly okay with it. Not going to hurt my feelings. So when I shifted into Cornerstone Faith Church, we began to do everything so non-traditional that people
Hmm.
going, well, what are you? You're a Buddhist? Are you? What are you? They start naming all the things that they thought I associated with it, and I would still go, you know what? I'm just a spiritual being. I
Yes.
respect all religions because there is some truth to all of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I said, because I understand there's truth to all of it, then why should I succumb myself to just one when it should be for everybody?
Hmm.
Everybody's going to have their own journey of where they need to get and how they need to get there. If they happen to come across my path, which I know is a divine intervention, my job is either to learn from it or give what the Holy Spirit gives me to them and then move on. So for authenticity to me is really understanding about loving myself. And I believe when people are mimicking others, they really don't know how to love themselves. They don't wake up in the morning and tell themselves, not everyone, but most people that I know don't wake up and go, man, you look good today. You're going to have a blessed day. Everything is going to work out for you. It doesn't matter what's going to happen. You know, the drive to work is going to be good, et cetera, et cetera. I began to do that. And the more I did it, the more authentic I became, where this is who I am. And I'm okay with this is who I am. And it didn't matter. Here's what was good about it. Other people's opinions that were negative no longer bothered me. That's when
Mm.
I knew I was authentic, where I was like, okay, you're entitled to that. I can see your point of view, and that's a perfectly okay. We can agree to disagree. At the end of the day, I'm still going to love you.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
me,
That's all.
that was being totally, genuinely true to self, because that's who I am.
Yeah. That's awesome. And you're kind of answering. You're in the realm of answering the question that I had, and the question was, how do you know? How does one know that they are not being authentic?
It's a feeling. To me, it's a feeling. You can feel when somebody's being authentic, and you can feel when they being fake. You can
Yeah.
feel when something's. I teach the class all the time. It's like walking into a room. If you've ever been into a business meeting and there was tension in that meeting,
Hmm.
you could cut that tension with a knife.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, because we're intuitive and empaths, we begin to scan that room to find out, okay, where it's coming from, because that vibration, that energy is so strong that
Yep.
I can't run out of the meeting. I got to be part of it. So what can I do to make myself more comfortable? And then we begin to smile, we begin to say certain things to lighten the load, that other people in that meeting that are feeding into that kind of draw to us and go, you know what? I want to be more like him. He's smiling, he's laughing, he's not taking it, that serious type thing. And then all of a sudden, the person who's causing the tension, I've noticed they begin to lighten up, lighten up, lighten up, lighten up. So for me,
Yeah.
it's always been a feeling. What does it feel? It's a feeling. We can feel when somebody's being dishonest to us.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
feel when they're misleading. We can feel those. We can feel genuine love.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about a feeling. How does I trust my feeling? And here the other thing is, most people aren't authentic because they don't trust the feeling. They don't trust that voice that they hear in their head that told them go left, and they went, nah, I don't think I'm gonna go left. I'm gonna go right, and then all of a sudden, crash, burn, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
things happen.
Yeah.
They don't follow that intuitive, so they just kind of go with the flow, and try to act as if it's okay, and not really get into their feelings. And then a lot of things is people don't know how to address their feelings. They don't know how to deal with their feelings. Nobody taught them how to feel. When I was coming up as a young boy going into men, you weren't supposed to cry. Men don't cry. So I'm going, well, why did God give me tears? Why did he give me emotion of sadness? Why did he give me these? What's the point of not crying to show what was the purpose of me trying to show this? What was the,
Yeah.
I didn't like that feeling. It's okay for me to cry. I cry because I'm happy. I cry because I'm, you know,
Yep.
not that I'm over emotional, but I've learned to cry just because I felt like crying, and it was okay to cry.
Right.
So most people
It's
don't want to deal with those type of feelings and address those feelings because of how they were taught about the feelings, how they were going to be perceived about the feeling, how they were going to be judged about the feeling. So now I'm going to suppress this feeling and try to make everybody happy when inside I'm miserable. And now I can't be my authentic self. So for me, it's always been going back to that feeling. How does this make me feel?
right.
And if it made me feel
Right.
good, I went down that path. If it didn't make me feel good, I stopped. When I stopped, it's always been be neutral when you stop. When I'm neutral, when I'm stopped, it allows me to see everything from a perspective than a perception when I'm neutral. And I think for me, getting to that feeling of learning how to be neutral was probably the hardest thing that I've ever learned to
Mm.
become authentic and deal with
Mm.
those feelings and those type of emotions, was to just kind of stop and just take those breaths and take those breaths and take those breaths, and just kind of like watch it unfold and say, you know what, I can be an observer, but I don't have to be an active participant. And oftentimes we put ourselves in the active participant, and then those feelings just come and beat us down, beat us down, beat us down. And then when we get home, we don't know how to deal with them. and they build
Yeah.
up. And a lot of those feelings that are suppressed, I believe, and this is just my opinion, are a lot of causes to certain diseases that we are facing. Because
Yeah.
I know what fear feels like. When I am fearful, there's a tension. There's a, it's that grip, man, and you're kind of like shallow breath and tunnel vision, and nobody likes that feeling. So everybody knows what the feeling feels like. So if I start getting that feeling, it's time for me to go into a place of neutral. Okay, what am I fearful of? It's okay to have that feeling, but what am I fearful of, and what is this my lesson? And I kind of go through that in my neutral state. So when I'm done with my neutral state, it allows me to consciously, deliberately say, okay, I can move in this better feeling direction because now I understand it rather than overreacting or underreacting based on a feeling.
Hmm. Hmm. That's awesome. I'm having trouble keeping up with my questions that come up while you're talking. That's awesome, and you're answering them as you go too. That I don't even have to ask. That's awesome. The What you just said about the feelings and being taught to suppress them.
Hmm.
When we do that, they don't go anywhere. They're they're stuck in the body when you don't express those things,
Hmm.
and you really don't think at some point that that's going to manifest as a dis-ease
Yep.
when you
Exactly.
when you can walk around and you can literally say out of your mouth and feel people say the weight on my shoulders,
Yep.
and you can feel it,
You can feel it. Yep.
right? And you
Hmm.
can feel when fear is activated, whether you feel it in your stomach
Hmm.
or you feel something in your chest around your heart, where like you've been heartbroken, whether it's a significant other or something that
Hmm.
happened as a child, and you can feel those things in your body, and you don't think that holding those type ideas over a period of time can have a negative effect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the more people that I counsel that suppress those feelings are the ones who, in the beginning stage, like you say, are heartbroken. You use a perfect word. Many are heartbroken behind that fear, behind that suppression, because they weren't allowed to express themselves freely.
Mm-hmm.
And because that feeling keeps building up and building up, because you have those moments where you feel it and then kind of suppress it, feel it and suppress it, but you never deal with it. After a while, like you said, that dis-ease becomes a manifestation in the person's life, and now they're starting to have health issues. Now they're starting to have relationship problems. Now they're starting to have financial problems. Now they're starting to have different problems that are affecting based on how they're feeling,
Yeah.
because they never addressed how to deal with the feeling and heal from it and say, you know what, how do I heal my broken heart from this relationship, or how do I heal my broken heart from this loss of a person who made the transition? How do I, and I say, feel it. What does it feel like? It's okay. It's okay to cry. And when grown men hear that, man, I was taught not to cry. Well, it's okay to cry.
Yep.
Let it out, man. Come on, give me a hug. Let's cry it out.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
okay. There's nothing funny about it. Nobody's going to think you're weak. And that's the perception. If I cry, I'm going to appear weak.
Yep.
I'm not going to appear strong. I'm not going to
Yep.
feel confident. I got to put on that face. And that's the other thing. People put
Oh
on
man.
those face to hide those diseases and those feelings that they're they got a mask, they got a big smile on it, but behind the mask, man, people are hurting,
Yeah.
really, really hurting.
The
And like
faces
I
in the
said before,
mask
a
are
lot of it
huge.
might go back to trauma. Mhm.
The faces in the mask are huge. That's one of the things that, initially it would upset me,
Yeah.
right? That I have been being this person, and I'm still removing those,
Hmm.
right? Because as the more you look inside and the more you watch yourself,
Hmm.
you see yourself not being yourself, but being someone that you were taught to be,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
How important is it for people to understand that? And you've been talking about it already, but this was a question I wrote down or idea. How important, especially in the line of about authenticity, how important is it for people to understand that Your life is about your expressing.
Yes.
And you're not expressing as long as you are concerned about what's going on out here, what
Yep.
other people think, all of that stuff. But when you're being authentic, being being expressed, fully expressed and being authentic are like this.
Yep. Absolutely. Um, because that's a issue in a lot of cultures. A lot of it has stemmed from, and I love the parents, but the parents don't know any better. But as soon as the
Yeah.
child does something that is original to them that the parents don't understand or don't like, they begin to use that control, use that control, use that
Hmm.
control, even all the way up into adult life. You're still my baby,
Hmm.
and you're still my baby translate to I know what you like and you don't know what you like because I'm older and I know more than you, so you shouldn't feel that way.
Right.
You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do this. And not all of it. I'm talking about the negative aspect of it
Hmm.
because there's a lot of good things that come out of it. But for those that are suppressed behind it, it really it's a slow death.
Yeah.
It is a very, very slow death. And then I believe also there's a lot of resentment there that is unspoken that adds on to that suppression because now that controlling party has put you in a submission where you're no longer free to express who you are.
Hmm.
So now when it's time to express myself, oh, you don't know what it's shunned away. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you don't know, it's that type of thing where now because it's so far out that they can address it, they can heal from it. Now they're stuck in this loop where now I got to deal with mom and daddy or grandmama and auntie. I got to deal with these aspects of the people in my life. And when it's time for me to express myself, I can't. So now what do I do? Because I cannot not deal with them
Hmm.
and from their perspective.
Hmm.
So they're kind of stuck in this loop and they don't know how to get out the loop. The what do you
Hmm.
call it? The gerbil wheel. They just keep going
Yeah.
round and round and round and around and around. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, you'll notice at some point they'll blow up.
Yep.
And when they blow up and the lid comes off because of all the stuff that's been suppressed, people around them are in shock and going, "Where is this coming from?" And this
Right.
person all along has been trying to say, I've been trying to tell you, 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 I've been trying to tell you. But every time I tell you, you don't listen.
Hmm.
Now
Hmm.
it's that
Hmm.
because they've blown up and people are shocked that they've blown up. Now there's the split.
Hmm. Hmm.
And because there's a split, now there's another rain of emotion that person who is suppressed has to deal with because they've blown up, but they've never addressed the feeling other than I've exploded. So now that suppression is still there. And now when they encounter other people who are similar to that, they treat them accordingly where now, oh, you're like them. So I gotta hold on this emotion, this attitude, this behavior. And eventually, if I don't tell you up front, then I'm gonna blow up. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden now you see this trigger of blowing up, blowing up, blowing up, blowing up, blow. Now everybody's going, oh, he got anger issues. She got anger issues.
Right.
No, they have an expression issue because they were not allowed to express themselves. And then, two, nobody taught them how to express themselves in a manner that was conducive to them. So now they don't know how to maneuver. So now they got
Right.
to kind of hit the reset button and learn how can I express myself that is more positive, that is more conductive to relationships, to myself, to those
Hmm.
around me, to my neighborhood, my neighbor, my community, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
And many of them don't get it. Many of them don't get it. And
Hmm.
I hate to use this word, but many of them turn into narcissists
Hmm.
because they've been hurt and they've been scarred by the ones that loved them or were
Hmm.
supposed to love them the way they thought
Hmm.
they should have been loved. So
Hmm.
now there's this narcissistic behavior where I'm only going to take care, and that's not everyone, but majority, the ones that I've dealt with, they just kind of take on that attitude of selfishness, me, myself, me,
Hmm.
because they were never allowed to express themselves. And when they did, it was shot down, it was put down, it wasn't taken seriously, it wasn't talked about.
Hmm.
Nobody talked about it to try to get that person's points of view other than their own points of view shoved on that person. And this is how it is. If you follow my way, you'll be perfect. And they've been looking at him going, I live with you, right? I've seen all your flaws. So what you're telling me is not totally
Right.
100% accurate. You want me to do something that you're not doing yourself.
Yeah.
You want me to do it,
Yeah.
you know?
And that's, that what you just said. I had two things. What you just said is something that, we're in this space and everybody that's going to be watching this is about to play and practice. So that is so powerful because that is something that each of us often see and have seen for a long time as children,
Hmm.
where you're being made to be a way and you're watching the adults not be
Hmm.
that way. And
Right.
that's the start of the mask and
Yep.
all of those things that are separating you from that authenticity. But as a child, you said the feeling. As a child, you had that feeling
Hmm.
that something wasn't right and
Right.
that you weren't being true to you.
Right.
You had that feeling when you were a child. So
Yep.
you do know what that feels like, right?
Hmm. Yep. It's a natural expression of who we were born with.
Right.
And because someone comes along and told us how to feel, how to live, how to be, it takes away that imagination for them to be authentic, to be expressive themselves.
Hmm.
And the more they grow into it, the more they either look at the parents, look at the grandparents, look at the family members, look at the ones that were close to them, and begin to try to emulate them the best way they can out of that respect, but then they lose themselves
Hmm.
trying to emulate. And then all of a sudden, now we got what we call a generational curse. Now it's
Yeah.
passed down from grandmama to granddaddy and so forth, all, until finally somebody has to break it. And then when they break it, it's like a taboo, or you become the black sheep all of a sudden, where how dare you go against the grain? This is the way we've always done it. Well, the way we've always done it might not necessarily have been right. It might
Hmm.
have been right for you at that time, but it's not right for me. How do I express what's right for me?
Hmm.
And sometimes for me, I had to put certain people in timeout.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way, but in terms of I need my space to gather me and understand me and be as expressive as I can be with my experience in this relationship. Because I've noticed within those relationships, in those moments, there was no bliss, there was no peace, there was no harmony. Not, you know what I'm saying? Not to that extent
Hmm.
because of it. Kind of
Hmm.
that we grew up in an era where children should be seen and not heard.
Right. Right.
And what did that do to us mentally? What did that do
Yeah.
to us where I'm on, like, as a child, how am I supposed to interpret that other than you don't want me?
Yes.
I'm not wanted.
Hmm.
You know
Not
what I mean?
valued. I'm not valuable
I'm,
enough to. That
I'm
stuff
not
starts
val yeah,
early.
I'm not valued enough. So now I've take the value with me into adulthood where children should be seen and not heard. So now I've formulated my own thoughts and my own deals and my own behaviors according to that, thinking that it's right. But then my spirit, it didn't feel right.
Hmm.
So then when it came to my own kids, I couldn't go, you should be seen and not heard. I had to say, no, what do you got to say? Talk to me. Let's talk about it. Tell me what you're feeling. They would cry. I'll say, hey, you know what? It's okay to cry. What are you crying about? Tell me what it is that you're feeling that made you feel this way. And the more they were able to talk and open up to me, man, the better our relationship became because they were able to express, Dad, I'm
Right.
feeling this way. It's okay to feel that way. What made you feel that way? You know? And for me, it was a learning point to kind of break that curse with my children and say, you know what? I didn't like the way it made me feel. Why would I impose that feeling on them when it's not fair to them?
Right.
And they have their own feelings, their own beliefs. And at the end of the day, they got free will. They got free will to choose however they want to feel. Who am I to
Right.
dictate how you're supposed to be seen and heard?
Right.
You know?
You
So,
know, I had the thought, and I had the thought even with our oldest son, but I wasn't the person to fully implement it the way I wanted to. But it was, who do I want them to be when
mhm.
they leave the house?
Right,
Right?
right,
Who do I want them to be?
right.
Based on my experience,
Yep,
I want them to be critical thinkers. I want them to be,
yep.
I want them to be bold. I want them to be assertive. I want them to be confident in themselves.
Hmm.
Now, the problem with that, which is what you just said, the way we were brought up, that person as a child can be viewed as disrespectful,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep.
And so I had that idea, but I wasn't the person to
Mm,
fully do that. Now, of course, I've been evolving the whole way, and so the normal of, I don't know if it's normal, but my younger kids are getting this version of me, and my
right.
older son often tells me often tells me that I'm being different with them,
Yep,
but
yep.
me and him have a lot of conversations, and he's
Right.
probably more in line with who I am than anybody else.
Hmm.
And I've changed. I'm not the same person that
Yep,
when you were little
yep.
now, right? And it really is the allowing them
Hmm.
to be, and to try to be that coach around the edge.
Right,
And then at the same time, know that they're taking on the person that I'm being. So, am I being in the right energy? Am I treating
right,
them the right
right.
way? Am I treating them the way and allowing them to see the person that I want them to be when they leave?
Yep, absolutely.
And so it's turned into, it's more about me than about them.
Yep. Man, I agree
It's
100%. One, because I did that with I got six children, and my first three, like I say, when I was into to that religion, that's how it was. So my younger children got a different version of daddy.
yeah.
And the older kids are going, why come I couldn't get that version? And
But
I
it
told them, I
also
said,
speaks to the process. And it
right.
speaks to letting them know, hey, it's a process to,
Hmm.
I've been at this process, and it's the same for you to uncover and discover.
Right, right. I like that. I'm gonna steal that one from you.
You go, you
Uncover
got
to
it.
these man under, and that's what I had, and I really had to go back and try to undo the best I could with the older ones and talk to them from that perspective and say, you know what? I was learning, I didn't know there was no rule books to having children and this and that. So what my
Yep,
parents taught me, I thought was right.
yep,
I'm sorry. Most I can tell you is I'm sorry. I
yep,
didn't, you know, even
yep,
though we're close, but the younger ones kind of get it where I can watch my youngest son who's in the Navy now just manifest, manifest, manifest. One of the things that impressed me the most about him being his authentic self and wise enough to watch everything, I watched him at 17 go, Dad, I want to work in Jack in the Box. Okay, great. That's great. I'm gonna work at the Jack in the Box right around the corner. In my mind, I went, the odds of you working at that Jack in the Box compared to every Jack in the Box in the city
yep,
is almost unheard of.
yep.
And long story short, he ended up getting that job right around the corner and making the amount of money that he wanted to make based on I was allowing him to express himself and be himself and, you know, open to, hey, Dad, I got a question. Where the other ones were, Dad, I got a question, and give the question, but then there was something that I thought that I had to tell them that my parents would tell me,
Hmm.
and they went,
Hmm.
but to watch him have that establishment and that connection of him taking on the new version of daddy and daddy allowing him to be himself. I've seen him just manifest and manifest and manifest to, you know what? I'm gonna join the Navy. I'm gonna join the Navy. I'm gonna join the Navy. And he'd been saying that since he was a little boy. I'm gonna join the Navy. And we thought, oh, you'll get out of it and join the Navy. So when he was able to join the Navy, he ended up getting a low score, and they wouldn't take him. We were in, I think, Roatan or Guatemala, and the recruiter called him up while we were gone. He was here and said, hey, we got a spot for you. Come down. He goes down with a low score and gets one of the highest jobs with a top secret clearance.
Wow.
I'm thinking, what? That is, in my mind, impossible.
Wow.
They set up a program that, and matter of fact, what's cool about it, they just ended this program, but they allowed him to go to boot camp, and they said the first 3 weeks that you're there, you got to retest and do this and do that to get your score back up. They taught him how to do the test, and he scored almost 25 points higher, kept the same job, and ended up getting a $4,000 bonus. And I
Wow.
went, wow, all because we allowed him to express himself and be his original self and didn't try to sway him this way or that way, but just kind of like you say, be that outside, that outskirt coach
Mm-hmm.
and try to give that loving advice and still kind of
Mm-hmm.
saying, okay, let me see what you're going to do. Let me see, let me see what you're about. And then just
Mm-hmm.
watch him manifest and create, and then watch his friends manifest and create. And then I'm almost getting teary eyed. He sent a letter. He said, Dad, I remember everything that you and I talked about. He said,
Yeah.
I'm so appreciative of you teaching me this way and
Yeah.
didn't restrict him into one form of believing and one form of judgment, because those suppressions cause us to judge.
Yep.
We judge ourselves, we judge people, we judge our children, we judge, you know, and we hear it a lot where we judge instead of let me allow, and then let me give an input on what should be right versus what isn't right, and then let you make your own decisions. Because my kids have heard me say, life is a great teacher. So in other words, when
Mm-hmm.
they didn't want to do what I wanted them to do, and they went and did something else that didn't work, well, life is a great teacher. What did you learn out of that experience? Because we talked about it. And
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't want to listen, which is okay, that's your prerogative. You have free will. So I learned really fast, free will is something else, man.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
you got free will. Just like a newborn baby, when it begins to walk, you can't tell that baby where not to walk to. It's going to wander away.
Right. Right.
You leave the door open, that baby's gone, just wandering, new to life, not knowing the dangers of traffic and, all the stuff that's out there. But when we allow them to be themselves and express themselves, to be them authentic selves, man, it's just a wonder. Just sit back and watch them be deliberate creators from that perspective and go, okay. And then to go back to the older children and go, hey, you know what? I'm sorry for how I did this, this, and this. It was not my intention. It was not out of malice, but it was from a place of love. But that love was very limited. It was
Yeah.
very constricted because I didn't know no better.
Right.
Now we had an open communication with them. Now they called me up, hey, Dad, now we talk about everything,
Right.
and that I love that feeling because, like you said earlier, I had to learn. For me, it was more me learning than
Mm-hmm.
me teaching them, because I had to learn how to be a whole different person as I got older. And I'm
Yes.
like, man, why come I couldn't get this when I was in my 20s, you know,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
early 30s? Why come I couldn't get it then? Why'd I hate to wait till I get to my 50s to learn this, or my late 40s and all that kind of stuff? And so it's been a game changer just to grow from where I was to where I am now. And it kind of makes sense because when I look back over my childhood, um, there was a lot of love, and I played more on the love aspect than the you should be seen, not heard.
Mm-hmm.
You should be seen, not heard. I got it more into the, you know what, they love me, because it wasn't, when they said that, it wasn't from a place of malice, even though I felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of later learned, oh, adults are talking and they don't want me to hear adult stuff. So this was their phrase of,
Right.
go away, get out my mouth. So that was like one aspect of it, you know.
Yeah.
So it kind of lined up to who I was raised up as a child, you know, coming from a long list of empaths and intuitives. My sister calls me the golden child because she thought I got favorite treatment and all that. And I said, well, it wasn't favorite treatment. It was just I watched and I learned and I began to develop, you know, and had some trip falls. We all have our trip falls as we grow. But I said, but I learned through watching all of them that it wasn't personal. It wasn't, I didn't feel malice. I didn't feel it being attacked. I didn't feel it being um, hurtful. It was just during that time, during that era. That's just the way it was,
Right.
you know? So when I learned not to take it personal, I had to kind of shift it to my children and say, hey, try not to take it personal because I didn't know and I'm trying to do better now. If you can accept me in my now, I'm here for you. You know,
Yeah.
doors open, anything you want. And that has changed the relationship between my older children and my younger children, where now we're more closer and more tight because they found new daddy and new thinking and new discoveries and, you know, new behaviors and all these things or new enlightenment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it showed them, you know what, hey, it's for them, it's not too late. You can start anytime you choose, you know? You can choose this better life for yourself and break the curse and move on in a different direction that's more conducive to who you are. Because I
Hmm.
had to tell them, I can't tell you who you could be. I can't tell you that. I can't tell you who to go marry and what job to go get. If so, you'd all be little robots. And say we're not created to be robots. We're created to be individuals and we're human beings. So now, human, what are you being? You have the right to be whatever you want to be. I'm not going to judge you. You know right from wrong to the best of your ability. That's the best. That's the best that I can do, and to show you unconditional love. And I am here for you, and I support you. And I'm going to tell you the truth to the best of my ability. And that's where we are.
How important is it for a person to think along the lines of, and this kind of piggybacks on what we're talking about with the being a parent and the idea of who you want them to be.
Mhm.
How important is it for a person to, when they start on this path and they're thinking along the lines of what they're intending to create versus what they don't want to happen?
Mm.
You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, yeah.
How important is it how important is that for them, someone on this path of growth and expansion?
Extremely, extremely important because each journey that we allow them to take, whether it be in a relationship, whether it be in a workforce, whether we want them to go into specific, like for me, coming from a military background, I wanted all my children to go into the military
Uh,
because for me, it was the the best next thing to slice cake, you know,
yeah.
because of the benefits and all this other things. And I quickly found out that that was not their path. And the path that they were taking, I had to really look at it and go, you know what? They're happy doing that. They don't have to go do what I do. They're living their life. They're not hurting anybody. They're not on drugs. They're not locked up. They're not in the ground, you know.
Right.
And I went, you know what? If you're happy, man, that's all that matters to me. Just be happy. And I would ask them, can you do better where you are? And if you can do better where you are, do that. If you can do a whole 360 from where you are and do something different, go do that. But for me, I was always military. When you turn 18, you should join the Navy. When you turn 18, you should join the Navy. When you turn 18, join the Navy. And they went, nah, I don't want to do that. I'm not doing that. So it's very important for them to have that because the undertaking allowed them to experience peace in their own way, where it wasn't a conflict between what they were doing and what I wanted them to do as a parent. You know, how many of us want our children to be doctors and lawyers and judges, and and then they go off and they become the the street sweeper or the salesman, or something that we
Yeah.
consider not glorified. But I say, you know what, if you go pick up trash and you're the sanitation man, you know how important that job is, because let them not pick up your trash for 3 weeks and find out how important they really are.
Right.
I said, let them
Right.
go into plumbing, that we don't think is a great glamorous job, and let your plumbing back up.
Right.
I said, but if you're happy doing that, then do that. I'm going to support you, you know? So it's very important for them to find their way. And it's also important for parents to say, you know what? At the end of the day, as long as I've given my child the unconditional love, the openness to come to me and express themselves and support them however they are and where they are, they'll be okay. Are they going to make mistakes? Absolutely. Did we make mistakes? And I think that's where parents forget, is we made mistakes also. But then when they make a mistake, we hold them to a much harder,
Yeah.
at least let me speak for me, a harder judgment than my own mistakes. And I had to tell myself that's not fair to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to back off of, and they make mistakes. It's okay. That was part of their journey for them to learn and grow and experience, so they can choose what they like, what they don't like, what they prefer, what they don't prefer, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, you know? So it's very, very, very important for not only them, but more important, mostly important for the parents and the ones that is guiding them to have that. We can no longer go from where we are, because these generational children are way, way, way different, way
Mm-hmm.
different. They've come into this innate world, incarnated world, with more knowledge with these devices
Yep.
than what we grew up with. So now we can't use the old cliche of what we used to compared to what is here now.
Right.
We didn't have the laptops and the computers and the cell phones, and we were given a key around your neck to
Yeah.
get in the house
Yeah.
unsupervised. And you knew when you got home, you better not open the door for.
Yeah.
These children are different now. There's GPS now. I can call you now. It's totally different. And I think a lot of parents, especially our age, didn't want to make that transition because we didn't understand it, because we went, well, I didn't grow up and I did this and I walked 15 miles in the snow, all that kind of stuff, where they don't have to do that anymore. So now I have to adjust in the times that we are now with the new souls that are here. And I have to look at my children as, you're a new soul coming in with different experiences, different emotions, different ideas, different dreams than I dreamt. My dream was, oh, you go to the Navy. Didn't happen. And I had to go, you know what? It's okay. They're living their dream, and they're happy within their dreams, and they're living their life. What do I got to moan and groan about? Just
Yeah.
because they didn't do it my way doesn't make it perfect, because I'm not perfect. I made way, 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 way more mistakes than I'd love to admit.
Yeah.
And them watching me, here's the thing, them watching me make mistakes and then try to put on them, this perfect character, oh, da, 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 da. But then they hear me tell some of the horror stories that I went through in the Navy, and went, why would I want to go through that? And you're trying to tell me it's the best next thing, that's kind of a contradiction.
Yeah.
And then I try myself trying to backpedal and trying to clean up. Well, not every day is like that. Now I'm trying to do damage control when you've already put it out there. So it's very important that the parents kind of take a different outlook, and now as we're getting older, we're seeing the parenthood and the grandmothers being younger and younger and younger and younger.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got a grandmama who's in their mid 30s, early
Yeah.
40s.
Yeah.
You wasn't supposed to be a grandmama until you was in your 60s and 70s, and but now we got a whole different generation that are coming in full of knowledge, full of change. And it's exciting to see them come in with full of change, just to watch them, like I say, watching my children do their own thing and break the curse of, you have to do it this way. And then I had to think, you know what? When I look in my family, Out of all my siblings, I'm the oldest out of six of us. I'm the only one who joined the Navy. I'm the only one who
Mm,
did martial arts. I'm the only one who did degrees and went to college and did this. And, why would I try to restrict them into not being who they are?
yeah.
And they had to teach me, hey, go back and look at your life. You pretty much broke every rule
Yeah.
culturally going into your life. When I told my mother I was joining the Navy, she thought I was lying. Oh, you ain't going nowhere. Only because she seen me slam the doors on recruiters, hanging up on recruiters, ripping up the little flyers, and I'm not joining the military. They not gonna tell me what to do, and all that kind of stuff. So when it was time for me to really join the Navy after high school and fail college, not fail college, but not really want to do the college at that time,
Yeah.
I had to make a different choice, and I had to go. Oh man, I got to go back to that guy who I slammed the door on, tore the card up, disrespected, and go in there and kind of find out what I could do. For me, it was let me leave to find out who I was, because if I stayed, I would have became something they wanted, and I didn't.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, but I wanted to find out more about me. I wanted to find out what bigger world we had other than Texas. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
grew up in a small town, then we moved to Dallas. Outside of that, I wanted to see what's outside of this. There got to be more than this,
Hmm.
other than
Hmm.
what you are telling me. So I wanted my children, in a sense, to join the Navy to have that same experience, but then not realizing that as we moved around, they were moving with me and not really realizing y'all had to conform every time we moved.
Hmm.
You had to adjust. And I never really took that into account until years later, where, wow, as a parent, military parent, that played a very hard role on them to meet new friends, because as children they're very sociable, meet new friends, and then all of a sudden 3 or 4 years we're leaving. Now you go into a whole nother state, a whole nother country, a whole nother environment, and now you got to start over and
Hmm.
meet new friends, over and over and over and over. So at the end of the day I go, well, you've pretty much been more places than most kids, so
Yeah.
it's not that important for me to want you to join now, because you'd
Yeah.
already lived from a bird's eye view, from your perception of what it's like, and seen me get up early, old dark 30 in the morning, and come back old dark 30 at night, and those type of things, where you've already lived it in your own way. Why would I want you to go follow that when you've already done it in your own sense,
Hmm. Hmm.
involuntarily?
Right. Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so to watch them from a parent's eye, from this perspective, knowing what I went through and what I have done, to watch them on their journey to find their own peace, to find their own completion, to find their own fulfillment, made me back up of and go, you know what? I am so happy where you are. I am so happy with the decision you have made. You know, I will always go, can you go further? Can you do better? If so,
Hmm.
how? When? What will you do better? And just kind of put that on their plate to kind of chew on a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I back off. I become the outside coach and say, okay, well, hey, that didn't work for you. That's okay. I've never taught them the word failure. There's no such thing as failure. I always taught them, hey, if this didn't work, try something else. If that didn't work, try something else. If that didn't work, try until you figure it out what works for you. And if
Hmm.
not joining the Navy works for you and this works for you, I am perfectly happy with that. And I had to come as a parent to that truth. And
Hmm.
boy, that was hurtful, because, again, my parents wanted me to go in this particular job. They wanted me to do this and marry this particular type of girl and so forth and so on. And I went, well, man, I broke all the rules. I didn't do anything they want me to do. So why should I put that conformity on them? And
Right.
when I did join the Navy, I still got the same wisdom from my parents, but it was different. It was very different. And I also saw them change who they were according to who I was and who I was becoming as my own authentic self. And a lot of it they didn't agree with.
Yeah.
But they had to accept it, because I got to the point where I wasn't backing down off of it. It was making me happy. I was okay with it. Just because it didn't fit them doesn't mean it didn't fit me. And I had to go to my kids, same thing. What doesn't fit me will fit you, and that's okay. So
Mm.
it has to be this transformation that we have as we grow through the process of watching and learning and going, okay, even with my children, that didn't work, what works? That didn't work, what works? You know?
Yeah. Now, how, I guess as getting to a final thought, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I've got a lot more stuff here that we haven't got into. It's got to be a second conversation.
Okay,
But I'm
okay.
sitting here feeling, I'm like, okay, no, this is like a different block, and we'll do this, we'll do that the second block a different time. But
Okay.
with what you were just talking about, how important is it for people on this path to understand? And we got into talking about being a parent. Um, how their kids are teachers, how your kids have been a teacher
hmm
in bringing forth those ideas and things that were inside of you that you were able to be aware that wasn't really the type of ideas that you wanted to be guided by. And
hmm
that I need to make these transformations because this is who I'm intending to be. And my children are helping me to see these things inside of myself.
Right.
And I've noticed that, but how important is it for people to be aware of that as they go about being a parent who is also on this path?
A lot of, well, it's a two-part answer. The ones who are on the path is very important. The ones who aren't on the path, they're still in the old energies and the old ways and the old habits. So this will not even conform to their thinking or their understanding because they're still stuck in that ways. But those who are on the path of awakening, it comes to the point where I want to be better, to show you to be better and do better. And I'm open to say, you know what? I made a mistake. Hardly do you hear parents who aren't on the path say, I made a mistake.
Right.
They would just let that mistake continue and continue and continue and then try to act as if this is the way it was supposed to be. But those on the spiritual path will say, you know what? Hey, I messed up. I wasn't perfect. I wasn't a perfect dad. I wasn't a perfect, I messed up. But as I've grown, I want you to show you that you can grow too. And if we can forgive from that level and you can feel that forgiveness on this path, now I've just opened up so many doors for you emotionally, physically, you know, with no limits. Now you can look at me and say, okay, well, now you're not being hypocritical because I've seen you do this and I've seen you drink that and I've seen you do that over there and, all these things. But now when it's, okay, yep, I did these things and now I'm open and hey, I wasn't perfect. The reason why I did it was this, and this. And you give it to your children like that from a spirit, man, you open them up to the world
Yeah.
because now they can really go, you know what? That was genuine. That was sincere. That was what I needed to hear from my parent, other than you're always here and I'm always there.
Hmm.
We can never be
Hmm.
here because parents never want their children never here. Even when they're
Hmm.
grown, you're my baby. You're my baby. You will always be my baby. And sometimes, and it might hurt some people's feelings, sometimes parents need to stop saying that because you have a grown child there that's not a baby anymore. A baby is something that is incapable of fending, feeling, defending itself, that has to be nurtured into. So for me to continue to call you my baby, and I know what they mean by that, but when they say that, it's still a certain type of control and
Yep.
doing for you
Yep.
when they say that to you, and you can feel it, and you still my baby. In other words, you can't really tell me nothing because I raised you. You can't raise me, you know. And what's unique about me being on the spiritual path, my dad, and I say this with so much humility and compassion and respect, that in his 70s, he's become my greatest student. I've
Mm.
become his greatest teacher because He's allowed me to teach him what I've learned at 70 some years old and willing to try it
Yeah.
and change and say, you know what? Hey, even though I'm a Mercedes, I can still do better. I can still grow. I can still expand. I can still make other choices better than I was before. And then for us, it becomes a great teaching truth that we give our children that they can be themselves in an honest way. Because
Right.
now my parent is being honest with me. So now if my parents is honest with me, I can be honest with myself and I can be honest with everybody around me. And I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
put on this
Mm-hmm.
mask and go out into the world and pretend that
Mm-hmm.
everything's okay when it really isn't.
Mm-hmm.
But now once I start switching on them to be better, to do better, to be more apologetic, to be more sensitive, to be more forgiving, to be open-minded, to be more acceptant to whatever choices they are, allow them to be themselves. And it allowed them to create better habits that will help them in their own future. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what I had on me was there's so much free, so not so much freer. There's so much more free
Yes. That's
mentally and
yes.
emotionally. There's so much stuff that's not there
Yes.
because of the work that you have done and those watching this recording, the work that you're doing. There's so much that is so much weight, misinterpretation, misunderstanding that's not inside of your children because of the
Right.
things that you have done.
Right. Right. And that would be the difference between those that are on the spiritual path to awakening to those who are still stuck in those old traditions, those old habits, those old ways of thinking that don't want to conform, don't want to change. It's either kind of the attitude of my way or the highway type thing.
Mhm.
And I seen myself going from that to this where you can choose any highway you want. It don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be my highway that you have to be on. You can build, matter of fact, go get you a bulldozer, go get you some tarmac, make your own highway, and you drive it down until you can't drive it anymore. So for the parents listening, whether they be younger than us or our age or older, if they're on a spiritual path, every last one of them will understand this because
Hmm.
every last one of them, including yourself, made those transitions through that process of learning, hey, what worked, what didn't work, what felt good versus what didn't feel good. Back to the simplicity of treating people like you want to be. These children are still my people, so I got to treat them how I would want to be treated. So why would I want to treat them like I was treated, not that it was
Hmm.
bad or good or whatever, but why would I want to instill that onto them when
Hmm.
there's not a need, especially when we're in the generation now where the age of technology is so vast. Social media, everything's about a like, everything's about a follow. This is the world we conform to. So now we have to teach them from our knowledge that perspective and also be learners of what they bring. Most parents
Yeah.
don't want to learn from the kids. And that's part of the problem. Most of them don't want to learn. For me, I look at each of my kids every time and go, okay, what did I learn from them?
Yeah.
Instead of, oh, I disagree, I disagree, I disagree, I disagree. Well, everything happens, again, like we talked about in the beginning, everything happens for a divine reason, a divine
Hmm.
timing. There is no coincidence. No. So if it didn't happen under these pretenses, why am I trying to force the circle into a star?
Right.
It's not
Right.
going to work because at the end of the day, those who don't conform, they'll find that the children have a lot of resentment toward them and then will automatically say, you know what? I can freely choose not to deal with you. And now you hear, in most cases, not all, parents don't have the relationship with their children that they would like.
Hmm.
You'll hear, oh man, I haven't talked to my son or my daughter and blah, 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 blah. Or they have grandchildren, or I can't see my grandchildren because me and the children are still at odds because of
Hmm.
that old thinking, those old ways, and those old
Hmm.
conformities. So it doesn't
Hmm.
work for them. But then when
Hmm.
you become spiritually awake, you become more loving. You become more embracing. You understand that all you need is love, but not just a love that has, oh, I love you because you're my family, I love you. It becomes that unconditional love, that real love that they feel that
Hmm.
makes it authentic, where they can go, you know what? I can go out and make a mistake, and I'm not going to be condemned and driven through the stakes because of my mistakes. Daddy's going to be there to say, you know what? Hey, life is a great teacher. You made a mistake. Don't stay there. Learn from it, move on, and grow.
That's awesome. That's
Indeed.
awesome. That's awesome. And I think that's a awesome place for us to. I'm not going to say end. I'm going to say pause.
Absolutely. Oh, pause.
I'm
Yes,
gonna say
good pause.
pause. There's
Good.
a lot more for us to get into, and we'll do that in the second edition. Any
Okay.
last words or and any last words and where can those who are inspired connect with and find you?
They can find me on the YouTube on Cornerstone Faith Church of Moreno Valley. They can find me on Facebook under Terrance Meekins. They can follow me on Instagram. I'm an open book. I'm a yellow pages. Um, for me, my last parting words is, as we started in the beginning, try to be your authentic self and be true to yourself as much as you possibly can. Because when you begin to understand unconditional love, that type of love embraces all things. That type of love heals all things. That type of love transforms all things. So we need to be that unconditional love in its authentic way, the best way we know how, regardless of how long it takes us to get there, is to be that type of love. That type of love requires a certain discipline, a certain state of mind, a certain state of allowance and willingness, and then more important, a letting go of. Because a lot of the things that we have had in our past, we had to let go of in order to get to this point now, that now we're seeing things manifest in ways that are more productive to who we are. That would be my parting words.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey man, that's awesome. This whole conversation's been awesome. So we just want to thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Meekins, for partnering with us to create this beautiful and powerful experience. And we thank and are excited for each of you who have found your way to us in this recording. We love you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been an honor. Have a blessed one.